As winter approaches, a lot of us have to start thinking about winter storage for our boats. This week, 3 winter storage hacks we should know before we haul out and say goodbye to summer. Whether you have an Atomic 4, a brand new Yanmar, or a 9.9 4-stroke longshaft, this is the single biggest question I hear in the marine world. The boat is getting hauled out and stored for the winter, so the engine won't be running for months and it'll be sitting in freezing temperatures. How do I protect it and what do I do with the oil? I called the guys over at RM Auto Restoration. These guys do all the classics and exotic cars, a lot of them for celebrities, and they happen to be local for me. I asked them, what should we be doing with our combustion engines for winter, because they know a thing or two about this kind of stuff. These guys send oil samples away for scientific analysis on $500,000 cars, both before and after winter storage, because they can't take chances with a numbers matching engine block. First, yes, change the oil. Used oil has a few problems. First, unburnt fuel is always detected in used oil, no matter how new the engine is, and that will cause corrosion inside the engine as it sits there. Second, as used oil sits, the contaminants become acidic and do damage to the inside of the engine and the seals. So as a rule, do not let your engine, no matter what it is, sit there all winter with used oil in it. We were told to change the oil and then start the engine either just for a few seconds, long enough to fill that new oil filter up with oil, or start it and run it right up to operating temperature. One or the other, but nothing in the middle. If you start it for, say, a few minutes, but don't let it get to operating temperature, it creates condensation that won't burn off because the engine isn't hot enough. So run it for about a minute to fill the new oil filter, or run it for 30 minutes to bring it up to temp. That's an interesting question. On one hand, you don't want your fuel to go bad sitting there all winter, so empty has some logic to it, but it's very hard to run an engine completely dry without getting stranded somewhere. The folks in the know suggest filling the tank completely, and the logic is because that means there will be very little air in the tank. Fill the tank and then add an additive to prevent the fuel from going bad, usually Sta-Bil or something similar. A full fuel tank means very little air in the tank, and that's important for 2 reasons. First, a tank half full of air can create condensation, as the air temperature outside the tank and the air temperature inside the tank are different, like a cold soda can. The last thing you want is condensation adding water to your fuel, and if there's no air in the tank, there's no air to condensate. Second, one of the reasons fuel goes bad when it sits is from oxidization, or its interaction with the air. If the tank is half full, the entire surface area of the fuel is exposed to air in the tank, and thus the fuel starts to go bad right away. If, however, the tank's completely full, very little air will be able to interact with the fuel, meaning it takes much longer for the fuel to go bad. It's suggested we add Sta-Bil or an alternative and then fill the tank right up. I have a bad faucet in my shower in the head of my boat right now because I didn't do this step well enough last time. If you live somewhere that freezes, do not leave water anywhere in your boat. First, we winterize the engine by running some kind of antifreeze agent through the water jackets. You can find non-toxic antifreeze products out there to use for this. On my inboard, I pull the intake line that sucks up seawater and I stick it into a giant jug of antifreeze. We just call it pink stuff around here. I have someone else outside start the engine and I am inside and I watch as it sucks up the pink stuff. A third person is outside the boat watching the exhaust. As soon as it starts to spray that pink stuff out of the exhaust, we know that all the water's out and we shut the engine off. This is also my post-oil change run-up to fill the new filter. 2 birds. But that's not all we need to do to evacuate water. My water tank for my faucets and my shower needs to be addressed. I usually run it dry and then I add a few gallons of non-toxic antifreeze, but I've also seen a few sailors use cheap vodka. It doesn't freeze and actually works as an antifreeze agent. And if you have the stomach for it, it's not really toxic, which is debatable. Once the water tank has a few gallons of something in it that won't freeze, I run all the faucets. this year, including the shower head, until I see the pink stuff come out, or I guess until you taste vodka. This way the tank and all the water lines and all the faucets are protected. There's no water left. I then shut the pump off and leave all the faucets open so that they can back drain. And the last thing on this water problem, and something you might not think about, is the bilge. The last thing we want is water getting trapped in there, freezing, and then expanding, cracking the glasswork in the bilge. If you have a keel stepped mast, this is hard if the mast is left up, because water always finds a way to come down the mast, and you can't just leave the bilge pump connected, because if water gets inside the bilge pump and freezes, it'll ruin the bilge pump immediately. I pull my bilge pump out and set it on the floor. I usually get the bilge as dry as I can, right down to sponges, and then I add about a gallon of the pink stuff right into the bilge. As water finds its way in over the winter, usually down through the mast, it dilutes the pink stuff, but it rarely ever freezes. I check the boat usually once every 2 months in the winter and manually remove water from the bilge if needed, adding more pink stuff if I have to. Those are my 3 winter hacks, but I'd love to hear yours. Let's share all the advice we can with each other to make winter easier for all of us. What winter hacks do you have for your boat? I'll watch for your comment.